welcome to Nothing Subtle here. This is your host, Leah, and I am so excited to finally say we are launching our very first episode today. So welcome, get cozy, because we are not going to waste much time before we jump right in. You know, it's important for me to offer a little bit of context before we continue. In fact, if you did not watch the preview, then I encourage you to go back and do so, because it will offer you some information about what we're doing. I have a real strong belief that we must go back in order to go forward. And what do I mean when I say that? I mean that I have learned so much more about myself and have gained a greater awareness when I go back and reflect on experiences that I've had, especially for those experiences that cause pain and loss. Because when you're going through it, things become so blurry and confusing and really hopeless. And so it's important for me to be able to just to reflect, because when we go through certain experiences, we can really attach ourselves to them, and we attach meaning about ourselves and others through them. And so I'm thankful that now I get to sit on this side and reflect back. So without further ado, let's begin. To full disclosure, I have not slept really well, and my stomach is a hot mess because I am full of nerves. Just going through some of the journals of figuring out which one to even start with without reading them, and just kind of picking one has been nerve-wracking. So I will say that before we jump in, there may be times that I might change a name or a place, because your girl ain't trying to get sued, but just really to protect the privacy of others. Also, if you like to just listen, then we're on Spotify and Apple and other platforms. Or if you prefer to have a visual, then we're also on YouTube. So you can go ahead, and those details will be underneath. So we are going to start. I found this, if you're watching, then you can see this cover. I believe I made this in 9th grade of high school. But there is a picture in the front that was kind of like a scrapbook. And this whole thing was supposed to be about my life. And we were required to do different journal entries, different poems, memoirs, all of that. And just looking at this cover brings me back to a very dark place. Words like the worst journey and beyond, despair, concern, detour, where to go, she weathers the worst conditions, almost didn't make it, fights for life. I mean, the words that I had chosen, I will tell you, I was not always the person to voice how I felt. In fact, I was taught that you shouldn't share things that people won't understand. And it was always the big white elephant in the room that no one acknowledged or talked about. And writing was a way for me to express myself in my own privacy. Never, ever did I think that I would be sitting here today and actually rereading them. But anyways, it became very therapeutic for me. And so this was random. I just picked memoir. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jump right in and begin to read that. The title was 25 Empty Bottles. It was almost 6 years ago, but I can still remember it like yesterday. Sometimes I wish I had never come home that day. It was after school, and I was starving as usual with nothing to eat. No lunch money, and of course, there was no lunch made for me. I ran directly into her bedroom because that is where anyone could find her, always sleeping. Except normally her door was locked, and that meant for everyone to leave her alone. But today was different. Her door was unlocked. I was actually feeling lucky. I knocked and walked in. "Are we eating tonight?" It was then that I knew something was wrong. All she said was, "It's really warm." She just stared at me with this far look, or as if I was speaking another language. She was messed up again. You would think after 12 years of living with this, I would get used to it. I remember when she came out of her 5th treatment center, and I thought, wow, this might be it. I just love those days when she was around, and I'm not going to just let her walk in and out of my life. I refuse to allow myself to accept that. What child should accept their mother, coming and going when she pleases? Well, it was all that and much more soaring in my thoughts that I turned and walked out of her room. I ran so quickly for the kitchen, swinging open the cupboard doors and refrigerator. Go figure, there was nothing but empty beer cans my dad had finished off the night before. Then I heard my mom coming into the kitchen. I didn't even want to look. It disgusted me that she was my mom. This is who I had called Mom. I had my head turned and she walked right past me and right outside. I glanced out of the kitchen window and there she was, searching for her car keys outside. Well, I remember her saying that it was, y'all, that don't make sense. Well, I remember her saying what it was that she was going to look for. I frantically found her keys and placed them tightly in my hand. I ran outside to see if my mother was still there. To my surprise, she was, but with less clothing on. I saw my mom standing in the driveway only with her bra, underwear, winter hat, and a scarf on. I would have thought it was funny if she was kidding around, but I knew she was so intoxicated with as many drugs as she found that day. People were walking by, in fact, and saw everything. Mom, please, come inside. Oh, God, help me. I was on my knees begging and crying, repeating these words, pulling on her arm until she came inside. At that time, after getting her inside the house, I was so disgusted. I was humiliated and frightened. I ran into my bedroom and slammed the door. I began to pray. Oh, God, help me. What did I ever do to deserve this? Why me? I just want my parents to love me. Unfortunately, these were the words I thought about every day. After a while, I began to get nervous. Normally by this time, my mom would be walking around, talking to herself, and I hadn't heard a noise for about 45 minutes. I peeked through her door, and she was lying sprawled out across her bed. She wasn't moving at all. I ran to her side and began shaking her. Mom, wake up, please, wake up. I called my dad and no one would answer his work phone. I checked her pulse and it was so faint I could barely feel it. I looked into her pill drawer and all I saw were about 25 different pill jars, empty. Completely gone. I saw her used needle on the bed next to her and I began to panic. 911? Oh my God, my mom. She's passed out. Maybe she overdosed. I don't know what to do. Please, can you come? I need help. It was only a couple minutes later that the ambulance arrived. They rushed her to the hospital and pumped her stomach. All I really know is that she admitted herself to her 6th treatment center. I will never be able to get the things I saw that day out of my head. The way I felt will always be there, and that day I will always relive when I see my mother messed up. She had been so lucky and has had more miracles than anyone I know. I'm so scared because one of these days it may be her last. I wonder to myself often, will I ever get my parents back? Or should I say, will I ever get my parents? Wow. I anticipated this to be difficult, but I did not anticipate the realness of that moment flooding back to me. I actually included a picture of my mom in this memoir from a Christmas in 2003. And I had written on the side that this was a Christmas that she was home and clean for. Wow. Addiction is real. And if you're listening and you think that you're alone, you're not. You're not alone. I wish that someone would have told me that I wasn't alone. That I wasn't the only kid dealing with this at home. So if that is you, know that you're not alone. You deserve a healthy home. You deserve a happy home. You deserve loving people in your life that see you and support you. And if you are on the other end and you are facing an addiction, I encourage you to get the help that you need. Get the help that you need. Well, friends who have joined me, until next time, I'll see you.